Today we're going to be reacting to the Minnesota Vikings 34-7 victory over the Houston Texans. Minnesota moved to 3-0. They look like the best team in football right now. And what I've loved from this Vikings team is they're doing it on all areas of the team. Their passing game, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions tonight. 181 yards isn't the most in the world, but they didn't need Darnold to throw for 300 plus yards because the run game was going and how well the defense was playing. Justin Jefferson, 6 for 81 and a touchdown. He did have a couple of drops. You could see 8 targets, 6 receptions. Jefferson should have caught all 8 of them, but again, that's nitpicking. It's not like they needed them, but it's just weird to see Jefferson have those drops. But overall, he had a good game. Most of his catches went for first downs, which you love to see. Aaron Jones had 5 for 46 and a touchdown through the air, and then as a runner, 19 of 102. Bounce back game for Jones. He had a big fumble that could have cost his team the game, if we're being honest, against the Niners. If it hadn't been for that fumble, the Vikings would have gotten a lot more credit. 23-17, they beat the Niners. Like, it was a great win, but if they had 30-17, looks a lot better. But still, just to see Jones do this was very, very encouraging. Of course, he came over on that 1-year deal. Same with Darnold, so you love that. Ty Chandler, 7 of 13. Not much of a run game outside of that, but Jones was the lead back. He got all of the work. He was the bell cow. Receiving, Jalen Naylor had a touchdown catch, which is cool. Looks like he's breaking out in the next year of his career. Brandon Powell had a 13-yard catch. Really not much in the passing game. We know that to this point. This was a defensive game for the Vikings. They go out there and they pick off C.J. Stroud twice in this one. The first few plays of the game, Harrison Phillips, who was named a team captain this year, ends up tipping a pass at the line of scrimmage. It goes up in the air and ends up getting picked off. Big time play from that moment on, and then the touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson. It just looked like the Vikings were going to run away with this game. The Texans, they beat the Colts and the Bears. And if you guys saw the Colts and the Bears game earlier, it was very, very ugly. It was just two bad football teams going at it. Somebody had to win. So the Texans, I mean, they come into Minnesota. This was their first test of the year. This was the first team where it's like they're for real, and you got to prove it. This was a test for the Vikings. It was a test for the Texans, and the Vikings dominated. So with this win over Houston, they beat the Niners. They beat the Giants, who a lot of people who hate on the Vikings like to say it's the New York Giants, but the Giants, outside of that Vikings game, like, they could easily be 2-1. The Commanders game, special teams kind of cost them that one, and then they beat the Browns today. So it's not like the Giants are a trash football team from what we've seen through 3 weeks. They look pretty solid. It's just the Vikings had no issue beating them whatsoever, 28-6 in week 1. And also Jonathan Grenard. I mean, Sam Darnold got the game ball, and it's well-deserved. The dude had 4 touchdowns. He was awesome. But Jonathan Grenard had 3 sacks, 4 tackles. He was all over the place. Andrew Van Ginkel had a sack as well. Brian Flores is breaking the NFL right now. Brock Purdy had absolutely no answer in that offense against him, and now Stroud and the Texans. And Bobby Slowick, you're a healthy team, only scoring 7 points. I mean, we got to start talking about Brian Flores a lot more. He should be a head coach, and I stood on that when I said the Dolphins letting him go just didn't make a lot of sense. He goes over to the Vikings, he runs this defense, and nobody's had an answer for it. The Giants scored 6 points, the Niners scored 17, and the Texans scored 7. You guys can do the math because I suck at math, but I mean, that is not giving up very many points. Like, that's almost like, I feel like, unheard of in the NFL to be giving up that few points. It's pretty crazy, especially against 2 teams coming into the year that we said are Super Bowl contenders, and to hold them to that is just remarkably impressive. Talking about the Texans, Stroud, 2 picks, a touchdown, 215 yards, sacked 4 times. He was just never in a rhythm. He was never comfortable. The pressure got to him. The windows were closing. They were tight. And you got to give credit to all areas of the Vikings defense, because they were rushing the quarterback, they were stout in coverage, and the linebackers made tackles, or the defensive backs came up and made plays. 14 of 38 rushing for the Texans. So now you have no run game, which means you're going to be in a lot in 3rd and longs, and there was 3rd and a lot of longs in this game because penalties were huge for the Texans and not in a good way. There was a lot of false starts and pushing your team back 5 yards when you already are having trouble moving the ball. Just not ideal. It's not how you're going to be able to win games. Credit to the Vikings crowd for being loud and electric the entire game. And you can tell that the Vikings feel like it's their year. Sam Darnold, what did I say in my last Vikings video, guys? That was the video that did the best for me since the start of the season. I said, if Sam Darnold is your biggest concern as a football team, you're in very good shape. The weapons are there. The offensive line has played well. The coaching's certainly there with Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores. The defense is there. Is Sam Darnold your concern? Well, Darnold has been absolutely sensational through 3 games. 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, 73.4 QBR, 657 yards. I mean, those are MVP numbers for Darnold. And the guy came over on a 1-year deal. He was the backup for the Niners last year. Ends up beating them, of course, last week. Beats the Texans, beats the Giants. And it's not just him being a game manager. He's had to make some tough throws. There's some throws Darnold makes where it's like, if another quarterback did that, we'd be talking about it all the time. But because Darnold does it, nobody really does. That throw to Naylor last week, there was a couple of throws in this game as well. That throw to Munt, the tight end, was very good. Darnold's getting rid of it quickly. He's also buying time with his legs and his pocket presence, avoiding sacks and pressure and just being on the move. He's doing a lot of great things, and he's got pretty much the perfect coach for him in Kevin O'Connell, a guy who played quarterback in the NFL, somebody, of course, who last season went through like 4 different quarterbacks and was able to help them out. I mean, I remember Mullins had a couple 300-yard games. I mean, Nick Mullins, a lot of people probably don't even know who that is unless you're a Vikings fan, and the guy's going out there and lighting it up. I mean, of course, winning games is a different thing, but he was having some big-time performances. And I mean, once the Vikings got Darnold, there was always going to be a lot of upside. Me personally, I was looking forward to J.J. McCarthy, but I mean, even if McCarthy was healthy, like obviously he'd still be the backup with how Darnold's playing. In terms of the future of the Vikings, I mean, how is this going to work? How is this going to work? Because you've got Sam Darnold, who looks like he should be a starting quarterback for the rest of his career, and now you drafted J.J. McCarthy. So, I mean, like, what do the Vikings really do? Because Darnold's going to get a lot of money this offseason, you'd have to imagine, and then you've got McCarthy coming off of a major injury. So, personally, I think the Vikings should probably just pay Darnold and have McCarthy sit behind him and develop him, because how many quarterbacks in the NFL have sat and ended up benefiting them a lot, right? McCarthy, he's the youngest quarterback in the league, so he's got development to do, and I was excited to see him. I would say, like, we talk about Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. Like, I was really excited to see J.J. McCarthy, but we'll have to wait. But right now, no one's complaining about that because Sam Darnold is just looking like an MVP right now, how well he's played, and the defense is backing him. I've also just liked the scheme that the Vikings are running, being very balanced, 28 carries, 28 passes. There we go. Exact same amount, 50-50 split. You love to see it. And for Minnesota, they just have to be number 1 in power rankings right now. I mean, if the Texans and Niners cannot move the ball on them, who is, right? And for Minnesota, their next game is going to be at Green Bay versus New York, bye week, Detroit Lions, Los Angeles Rams. So for the Vikings, I mean, they've got 2 very tough opponents. Jordan Love probably is back for that Week 4 game. And then, of course, at home against the New York Jets. So 2 tough teams, but the Vikings, they're ready for this. They don't really care who they're playing. They're going to come after you. And, again, they just believe whenever they take the field, they're the better team, no matter what the matchup is. And I just love what I'm seeing out of the Vikings. I think they're going to do big things this season. And you love to see it because everyone said the Vikings were going to finish last in this division. And the season's still young, don't get me wrong. But right now, I think without question, the Vikings look like the best team in this division. The Bears are trash. The Packers, they're 2-1. They're doing okay. And then the Lions are 2-1, but they just haven't impressed me. But the Vikings have impressed me. Right? They've impressed me the most of all teams in football right now, without question.